Hey everyone, Kevin here. I have just finished an article called Hey WordPress Companies, Don't Forget About Your Customers. And hopefully I've not retitled that by the time this video goes out. But basically the article refers to a lot of the changes that have been happening in 2017. I sometimes frequent managewp.org, and the articles that are shared there are mainly shared by developers. So when you check out the articles there, you do get a kind of insight into what the current problems are in the WordPress world. And this year in 2017, a lot of the issues that are being discussed are regarding the structure of a WordPress company. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about pricing. I'm talking about how companies are making money. Now, there's been a lot of different discussions. For example, over the last few years, we've seen a lot of WordPress companies move away from lifetime licenses. Those weren't seen as sustainable because if you've got a large user base, they've paid for lifetime licenses, then all your money is generated by bringing in new customers rather than providing good support to existing customers. So going back even further, WooThemes did this many years ago, and they're going to change it to software as a service, or SaaS. It's like a buzzword, everyone's using it just now. But really what it just means is WordPress, a lot of WordPress companies are changing to a subscription model. And I'm sure we're going to see lots more changes over the next few years. We're seeing it with companies like StudioPress offering hosting and themes and everything under the one package under a subscription model, rather than you buy a product once and that's you got it for lifetime. But we've seen some other discussions as well. Pippin Williamson with Easy Digital Downloads, he increased his prices by up to 250%. And we also saw renewal discounts being removed. Most recently, WooCommerce. They effectively doubled the cost of using WooCommerce for most shop owners, because in the second year, the cost of renewing an extension was 50% of the original cost. But now they've put it up to 100%, and there's a lot of people unhappy about that. Now, that is what I talk about in this article. And really, if you look at why this is happening, it's easy to understand. There's a good article by, Vova Feldman on Freemius, and he talks about the whole issue of renewal discounts and things like that. I've touched upon the subject myself over the past, but really all of this is about WordPress companies trying to adapt. They're trying to survive in a market that is changing, and a market is very, very competitive. I've been reviewing WordPress themes and plugins for over 10 years now, and in the past, I knew every major company, and the last few WordCamps I've been to, I'm just surprised at how many companies that are out there that I've just never heard of. There's just so many people operating in this field, and because of that, you've got more people fighting for the same slice of the pie, and margins are perhaps thinner for a lot of companies. There was apparently the people that are selling through ThemeForest and Code Canyon, apparently Envato marketplaces got a really bad penalty by Google and other search engines. So traffic has been reduced, and that has resulted in a lot of people losing money there as well. Now, ThemeForest did change from a kind of lifetime license to now you get 6 months of support, and you can pay to extend the support and updates and things like that. Now, what I'm finding is, and the point of this whole video is that I think that during all of these discussions, the customer is largely being forgotten. I think that, it's understandable that companies are restructuring, and it's understandable that they're trying to increase profits. That is what companies do. That's what they need to do. They need to grow, they need to make more money. But I do think that along the way, WordPress users are kind of being forgotten. Now, in my article, I talk about this, and I do talk about the fact that many WordPress users are an absolute pain, and they are. I experienced this firsthand. In my old blog, when I launched Blogging Tips in 2007, I added a support forum. When I launched WP Mods in 2010, 2009, I had a support forum there too, and I would get a lot of WordPress beginners coming to the forum, and it always frustrated the hell out of me how, I won't go as far as saying people were parasites, but beginners would come and say, oh, how do you do this? And you're like, you can find an answer to this after a 2-second search on Google or, Bing or whatever. But they wouldn't do it. And then you go, all you have to do is this, this, and this. And they'll say, oh, can you not do it for me? And you're like, no, do it yourself. People were expecting the world. And I think that is a problem in the WordPress community itself. People download free plugins and they get angry when the WordPress developer isn't on the support forum on WordPress.org every day answering questions. And many developers do that. Or you buy a plugin that costs $8 and they're wondering why 3 years later they're not getting support after an hour of posting a ticket. You need to have realistic expectations, and I think a lot of WordPress users they don't have realistic expectations, really. They expect the world, and I think that is a problem as well. I've heard many developers talk about the fact that I've got some friends that run WordPress theme companies, and people will come to them for any problem, nothing to do with a theme. They got a problem with a plugin, they'll go to the theme company because the theme company was providing good support. They got a problem with their hosting, they'll go to their theme company first. And it is hard to draw the line and explain to customers, listen, we're trying to give good support, but that's with them, that's their problem. That's not our problem. So I guess that does kind of push people towards an all-in-one solution, people that do need support. But here's the thing, I realise that many WordPress users are draining. I realise it can be hard to provide good support, especially when people are novices, especially when your customer base, many of them just expect you to do everything for them. And if you don't do it within an hour or 2 hours, they're going to be unhappy with you. So that is understandable. But I do think that WordPress companies are far from perfect. And a lot of the changes that have happened over the last year have illustrated that WordPress companies are largely forgetting about their customers and they're not taking the consideration of their customers when they're making big decisions. So WooCommerce, who recently doubled the cost of renewing the products, their extensions, that is a very good example, because if you look at WP Tavern, there's an announcement about them doubling the renewal costs. And one of the biggest complaints, and this is, I'll be honest, this isn't something I realised was a big problem. I don't use WooCommerce myself for a shop, but many of the complaints were saying, listen, support is terrible. You're taking 3 or 4 days to answer tickets and you're not even answering, what I asked. You're not providing good support. So, I mean, you put yourself in the position of someone who's got a shop, who's bought any product. If any company is providing really bad support and then out of the blue, without warning, without any even announcement about it, they double the cost of the service. Now, it's understandable why people are very, very annoyed about this. And it is clear that WordPress companies aren't taking the views of customers into consideration. Now, it's not just that. One of the biggest points that I try and make in my article is that, can these price increases be justified? And I think, value is subjective. What's valuable to me? I might say this is worth $100. Someone might say, no, that's only worth $10. Value is subjective, and you're always going to get people that are unhappy when your prices change or prices increase. But I think it is important to look at it from the customer's point of view and try to see if you can justify those price increases. Now, I'll give an example. I bought quite a lot of products from Envato marketplaces. And there's been a few times now where I've bought a WordPress plugin. It didn't work correctly. And I've raised an issue. I was like, listen, this isn't working. There's lots of errors. It's performance issues. It's generating bugs. And, the developer will come back to me like a month later. And you're like, no, it's not fixed. Can you do this? Can you do that? And then they'll come back another month later. And then this actually happened. I remember one time it happened with a theme. And I bought a theme for a friend. It was to do a little website for me. He says, can you buy it and just upload it? So I did it for him, uploaded the theme. And by the end of the 6 months, the default 6 months of support had ended. But the product was still full of bugs. The seller was still taking weeks to answer basic questions, then come back and said, oh, sorry, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the 6 months, I was left in a position where the product was still not fit for purpose. It was still generating errors. And yet now, if I wanted to get any support for it, I had to pay more money. Now, is that, can you justify that? This is the thing. And this kind of issue exists as well with dedicated WordPress themes and plugins. Now, if you go back and look a year or so ago, Elegant Themes changed their business model. What they did in the past was boast about how many WordPress themes and plugins that they got, and they shifted towards making 1 or 2 or 3 really good themes, the most prominent one being Divi, and focusing all their attention and energy on 1 really good or 2 really good themes rather than having 80 themes, 90 themes. Now, lots of people were very unhappy about that because they always had a membership promise that they would add 2 more themes every month. Problem is, it sounds good on paper, getting 2 new themes every month. It isn't really. It really isn't. There was one point where Elegant Themes, they had like 80, 90 themes, whatever it was, and some of those themes hadn't been updated in years, and they looked like very, very outdated. They looked like 7, 8 years old. And apart from being updated in order to work with the latest version of WordPress, they hadn't been updated. You know, there was no features being added. There was no additional functionality being added. It was simply just to make sure that it still worked with the latest version of WordPress. And this is a problem with many dedicated WordPress theme stores and plugin stores. They're talking about changing from lifetime accesses, you know, a one-time fee for a product. You get a year of support and updates, then you have to pay for more, and changing it to a subscription model. Now, I 100% fully support subscription models. I fully support the idea that companies should charge for support. It's the biggest drain on time for developers, and you need to charge for support. You can't expect any company to be sustainable long term. Otherwise, you go back to the lifetime access, and that's purely built upon the fact that you need to make all your money from new customers instead of looking after existing customers. So I do support it, but it's easy to forget that customers sometimes get a really raw deal. They get a really, really raw deal. Let's say there's an imaginary WordPress company, right? They've got 20 WordPress themes and they've got 10 or 15 WordPress plugins. Now, under a subscription model, they can get access to all of those themes and plugins on a yearly basis. Or perhaps, for example, they get access to one theme on a yearly basis. And after that expires, they get no new updates, they get no support. The problem is when a WordPress company starts diversifying and they start releasing more products, it becomes very, very hard for them to maintain all of those products. You know, especially with WordPress changing with new features, it just isn't sustainable. I would prefer companies to keep the number of products they've got down to a minimum and focus more attention on them. The fact is, when it comes round to the renewal date, you might find that, I've seen this firsthand, many, and I won't name them, but a lot of WordPress theme companies and plugin companies, ones that are very popular and very large, many of their products have not been updated in years, and I'm talking years. In fact, there was one plugin I reviewed, and again, I don't want to name names and call anyone out, because I do think this is something that's happening across the WordPress community. But the plugin hadn't been updated in something like 4 or 5 years, and they were still charging like $45 or $50, whatever it was for it. So that can be kind of cheated as well, though. I mean, it's not difficult to just add one little thing or do one little update to a theme and then say, oh, it's been updated recently, when really, has it been updated? If all you are doing for a product is just updating it to work with the latest version of WordPress, I guess it's an update, but you're not really giving customers a lot. And I think that is a problem with many WordPress theme stores, many WordPress plugin stores. You're getting access to a lot of products, but a lot of those products haven't been updated for years. And whilst you're paying for support and updates on a yearly basis, if you don't provide support and the products you're buying aren't being updated on a regular basis, then what the hell are you paying? What are you paying for? Really? This is why I'm saying I think there has to be some justification for price increases. And I do think that, I do understand, I really do, honestly, I do understand why WordPress companies need to restructure. The WordPress premium market is very, very competitive. It really is. And when there's more people fighting for the same slice of the pie, you're going to see margins being cut. becomes more competitive, and you need to build a pricing structure. You need to build a company structure of charging all of your users. You need to build something that's sustainable, something that's going to last, and something that isn't built upon bringing in new customers and forgetting about existing customers. But along the way, customers are being forgotten. And that, I mean, one of the examples I use in my article is that this is especially true when a new product is being released. Now, if you go back and look at all the reviews I've published over the years, you'll see a common theme with my plugin reviews in particular, but also theme reviews. All of the reviews, now it goes without saying, when you're a WordPress blogger or when you review WordPress products, most of the products that you review are new. They're just released. And that's because the companies come to you and say, oh, would you like to review it? So you review it on your blog. Now, I see the same problems in plugins and themes that have just been released. They come to me and the plugins have got millions of spelling errors. There's no documentation within the product itself, be it a theme or plugin. There's very little documentation on the website. They've got pages on their website that hasn't even been completed yet. And there's bugs and there's errors. And frequently as well, which might surprise some people, but a lot of the time on the sales page, they'll say that, something, it can do this, this and that, except it's not actually available yet, so they'll promote the fact that a plugin or a theme can do something, but it's not there yet. They say, no, but that's coming soon, but there's no schedule for it to actually be implemented. So it's not like WordPress companies are innocent in this. They do make mistakes, and they do sometimes forget, about the customer. I did a project a couple of years ago, and again, I'm not going to name names. I'm not trying to single anyone out, but the company came to me and said, listen, we've got a big WordPress theme coming out. Can you review it, test it, make sure it's working okay? So I tested it over a few days. I tested against plugins. I tested it working. And the thing was an absolute mess. It was full of bugs, absolutely littered with bugs, littered with spelling mistakes. And they were talking about launching it, like a week or two later. So I did like a 5-page report. I listed a huge amount of errors, things that needed to be addressed. The sales page was listing all these features that weren't even in the theme yet. Thank you, but this is exactly what we needed. Fast forward a couple of weeks, they released it anyway. They didn't care. They just released it anyway. I'm not sure if they've fixed it now, but at the time I was like, listen, well, what do you want me to do? It's very difficult for me. If I review it now, I need to point out the fact that this thing is a mess, and I can't recommend it. It's not fit for sale. It really is not fit for sale. Now, established companies are more likely to address those kind of errors, and they're more likely to look after their customers. But I do think, by and large, with all these discussions about prices changing, all these discussions about how, for example, another big change was automatic renewals. So rather than being opted out, after a year, you will automatically be billed. All these kind of discussions, customers aren't being even given a consideration. I've seen it in Managed WP, all these discussions about, did your sales increase? Did your profits increase? Did your blah, blah, blah increase? There's no consideration as to whether the price increase is justified. It's all about whether the bottom line can go up. Now, I'm not an idiot. I realize this is a capitalist world. It's a competitive marketplace, and at the end of the day, it's all about profits. But if companies start thinking about the needs of customers a little bit more, give them a little bit consideration when they do restructure, and take into consideration all the suggestions, then they will deliver a better WordPress product, which should, in theory, lead to more sales. I'd love to hear your opinion on this, guys. Please do check out my article, which this video is accompanying. You might be watching this video on the article itself, but if not, if you're on YouTube, please do check out the article, which I will link below. I'd love to hear your opinion on it, so please do leave a comment on my blog or on YouTube and give me your opinion on it, whether you agree with me or not. I'm sure that I've touched upon a lot of subjects that many people will disagree with, but I think this is important that people within the WordPress community at least start talking about this, because all of these discussions about restructuring, pricing, renewals, all of this, no one ever mentions customers. No one ever mentions whether these price increases are justified. And we need to get back and think about that. or the WordPress community as a whole is going to change, and I don't think it will be changing for the better. So I realise that, you know, perhaps a lot of that sounds idealistic and, you know, a little bit pie in the sky stuff, but as someone, I think I sit in the middle. I think I sit in the middle. You know, I interact with customers, you know, people who use WordPress products, and I interact with WordPress developers and companies. So hopefully we'll start talking about this. Leave a comment below. I'd really love to hear your opinion on this. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the Rise Forums channel. And until next time, take care.